Hi, everyone. We're back for part 2 of our series of who would Apostle John likely have believed was at least an Antichrist if he had read this person's writings. In part 2, we're specifically looking at this issue. Did Paul have a Docetic view of Jesus matching the Antichrist test of Apostle John? And this is based on Philippians 2, verse 7. And we're keeping each of the lessons down to 10 minutes, hopefully. And then if you want to see the next part, you can look in the description and see the whole series, and you can jump wherever you want to. And hopefully that will allow everybody to catch up if you've even started in the middle. Okay, so let's look on to this episode. Okay, so this is part 2 of our series of who would Apostle John likely have believed was at least an Antichrist if he read this person's writings. And we're going to focus on Paul's writings in particular. Did Paul have a Docetic view of Jesus matching the Antichrist tests of Apostle John? This is Philippians 2, verse 7. I'll explain what Docetic means in a minute, but it basically means the word appear. So if Jesus only appears to be a man, that's a Docetic doctrine. And we'll try to keep it to 10 minutes. Now, here is 1 John 4, 2-3. We're just reminding you, this was in the last episode, gone through carefully. But 2 and 3 both have where the test is, he hereby know you, the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ is come in human flesh, sarx, is of God. Verse 3, and every spirit that confesses not that Jesus Christ has come in human flesh is not of God. And this is that spirit of Antichrist, where you have heard that it should come, and even now already it is in the world. So Docetism is a claim that Jesus did not have true human flesh, but only appeared to have human flesh. So that's the interpretation that has been the understanding of this passage. If you say that Jesus just appears to be a man, but he really isn't, doesn't really have human flesh, then you are a Docetic person. You are the spirit of Antichrist. Okay, and let's just go a little deeper in a dive on the word for flesh in these verses and why the proper thing to do is to put in brackets. This is not flesh of just any being, but it has to be a human being. So if you look over to the right, this is Mouncey's lexicon that he attaches to it, and you can see there's 5 different references to human. Actually, there's 6. So the preeminent concept is the person has human flesh. So if you say Jesus only appears to have human flesh but did not actually have human flesh, that is a Docetic heresy, and heresy in the sense that a dangerous one, because it's the message of Antichrist. And you'll see how damaging it is once we get into it in depth. Okay, so now we will look at Paul's view that Jesus only appeared to be a man. But to do that, we'll put it in a greater context. So Paul represents a third view, neither compatible with Trinitarianism nor Unitarianism, that Jesus was the firstborn of creation, and hence the highest created being, Colossians 1, verse 15. And it goes on to say that Jesus, God, through Jesus, created the heavens and earth. So Jesus is obviously not a man because he's not part of the heavens and earth that was created by God the Father. He himself is creating the heavens and earth, and that includes all of humankind. So he cannot be a man because he is not a part of that creation. He's part of something that happened before even the heavens and earth were created. Yet Paul expressly says that Jesus is not God in 1 Corinthians 15, 27-28. He says instead, Jesus will put everything under God at the end, except God himself. The latter is Paul's clear teaching in 1 Corinthians 15, verses 27-28. If we look to the right, you'll see what I mean. And when all things shall be subdued unto him, meaning Jesus, then shall the Son also himself be subject unto him, God the Father, that put all things under him, that God may be all in all. So God put everything under Jesus first, but with the objective that Jesus would then put it all under God, and that would please God. So Paul is clearly saying Jesus is not God, because God is a completely distinct being from Jesus, as it follows also logically from the fact of Colossians 1:15, that Jesus is the firstborn of creation. He cannot be God because he's not an eternal being. According to Paul, he's a firstborn of creation, a specific person in point of time. Then we're going to see that Paul says the following. So did Jesus have true? So the question I have is, so did Jesus have true sarx? Did he have true human flesh? That's a Greek word for human flesh. Paul says in Philippians 2, verses 7-8, Jesus only appeared in the appearance of a man. Jesus emptied himself taking on the form, that's an appearance, of a servant, being born in the appearance, that's the literal word, of a man. So let's take a look at the actual verse, Philippians 2, verse 7 to 8. Jesus made himself of no reputation and took upon himself the form of a servant and was made in the likeness of man. This is from Mountsy. Likeness of man, homioma, anthropos, and being found in the appearance as a man. So Paul uses two different words intended to convey the same idea that Jesus isn't a man. He has the likeness of a man, he has the appearance of a man, but he's not truly man, which fits in with his Christology that Jesus was the firstborn of creation. Therefore, he preexisted the creation of man. So how can a being who's not God, because he didn't exist eternally, who is created at a finite time, who himself is then the creator of the heavens and earth, including all human beings, including mankind. Adam is the first man. Jesus is not in a lineage of Adam. He's in whatever state he would have been when he was firstborn of creation. Maybe a quasi angel, we don't know, but he's not of man, because the first time Genesis says that God creates man is in Genesis, which Jesus is not part of that. Jesus is the maker of that Genesis world, according to Paul. And there is a similar verse in Romans 8:3 where Paul says Jesus came in the likeness of sinful human flesh. On the other hand, you can argue that it doesn't say he came in the likeness of human flesh. That could be a material difference, right? It could mean that Paul is saying Jesus came in non-sinful human flesh and is making a distinct point that he didn't come in sinful human flesh. So, but that doesn't take away from what we see in Philippians 2, 7 to 8. It just makes this not as conclusive as it could be to prove that Paul has the Docetic view. Philippians 2, 7 to 8 does it all by itself. Okay, next we're going to move on to the movement of Marcion in 140 AD, and Christians of that era, of the mainstream of that era, were basically alarmed because this group was growing larger than the numbers of people who were in standard Christianity up to that point. And these people were bringing a very different gospel, and they only thought Paul was the only valid apostle. And we'll see what you think about that. But they clearly had the message that Jesus did not come in true human flesh, and we'll also see the repercussions of that. All right, so see you next time in part 3. God bless. Take care. Ciao. Bye.